The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Kensington Palace as Thomas Mitchell adjusted his ceremonial uniform for what he thought would be another ordinary day of duty. He had served as a royal guard for 12 years, protecting the most important family in Britain with unwavering loyalty and discretion. His polished boots clicked against the pristine floors as he made his rounds, checking security points and ensuring everything was in perfect order. Thomas had always taken pride in his work. Born in a small village in Yorkshire, he had dreamed of serving his country from a young age. After completing his military service with distinction, he applied for the elite position of Royal Protection Officer. The rigorous training, background checks, and psychological evaluations had been intense, but Thomas proved himself worthy of the honor. Now, at 34 years old, he was considered one of the most trusted guards in the palace. The royal family had always treated him with respect and kindness. Prince William would nod politely when they passed in the corridors, and Princess Catherine often smiled warmly at the guards during official functions. But it was the children who truly captured Thomas's heart. Prince George, with his curious nature and endless questions about the guards' duties, Princess Charlotte, with her bright smile and infectious laughter, and little Prince Louis, who would wave enthusiastically whenever he spotted Thomas during his patrols. This particular Tuesday morning seemed no different from any other. Thomas had completed his security briefing at dawn, reviewed the day's schedule of royal activities, and taken his assigned position in the east wing of the palace. The Queen Consort Camilla was expected to visit later that morning for a private meeting with Princess Catherine regarding upcoming charitable events. It was a routine visit that required standard security protocols. As Thomas stood at his post near the family's private quarters, he could hear the gentle sounds of the household beginning their day. Staff members moved quietly through the corridors, preparing breakfast and organizing the children's schedules. The palace, despite its grandeur, often felt like a family home during these quiet morning hours. Filled with the familiar sounds of daily life around 10 o'clock, Thomas noticed increased activity near the main entrance. Several black vehicles had arrived, indicating that Queen Camilla had come for her scheduled meeting. He watched as she was escorted through the formal reception areas by senior staff members. Everything appeared to be proceeding according to plan, and Thomas maintained his vigilant watch from his designated position. The meeting between Camilla and Princess Catherine was scheduled to take place in the Blue Drawing Room, a beautifully appointed space used for important family discussions. Thomas could see palace staff preparing the room, arranging fresh flowers and ensuring that tea service was properly set up. These meetings often lasted several hours, covering various charitable initiatives and royal duties that required careful coordination. As the morning progressed, Thomas noticed that Princess Charlotte had returned from her morning lessons. At 8 years old, she was a bright and spirited child who had inherited her mother's grace and her father's sense of humor. She often spent time in the family quarters after her tutoring sessions, playing with her toys or reading books in the comfortable sitting areas. Thomas had always been impressed by how normal and grounded the royal children were despite their extraordinary circumstances. Princess Catherine and Prince William had worked hard to give their children as typical a childhood as possible, within the constraints of their royal position. The children attended regular schools, participated in sports and activities, and were taught the importance of kindness and service to others. The palace corridors were designed with both grandeur and privacy in mind. While the formal staterooms were magnificent spaces meant to impress visiting dignitaries, the family quarters were more comfortable and intimate. It was in these private areas that the royal family could relax and simply be themselves, away from the constant scrutiny of the public eye. Thomas's position required him to be constantly aware of his surroundings, while remaining as unobtrusive as possible. He had been trained to blend into the background, to observe without being noticed, and to respond instantly to any potential threat. His sharp ears and keen observation skills had been honed through years of experience, making him acutely sensitive to any unusual sounds or activities within the palace. The training for royal protection officers was extensive and ongoing. Thomas regularly participated in emergency drills, threat assessment exercises, and communication protocols. Every guard was expected to maintain the highest standards of physical fitness, mental alertness, and emotional stability. The safety of the royal family was never taken lightly, and every precaution was implemented to ensure their security. As the clock approached 11, Thomas heard footsteps approaching from the direction of the blue drawing room. The meeting between Camilla and Princess Catherine appeared to be continuing as planned. However, something about the atmosphere seemed to shift subtly. There was a tension in the air that Thomas couldn't quite identify, but his years of experience had taught him to trust his instincts when something felt different. The palace had its own rhythm and flow, patterns of movement and sound that Thomas had learned to recognize over his 12 years of service. When those patterns changed, even slightly, it often indicated that something significant was happening. Today, there seemed to be an undercurrent of unease that made Thomas more alert than usual. He positioned himself carefully, ensuring that he had clear sight lines to all the important areas while remaining in his assigned location. His hand rested naturally near his radio, ready to communicate with other security personnel if necessary. The protection of the royal family required constant vigilance and the ability to respond immediately to any situation that might arise. The morning light continued to stream through the tall windows of the palace, creating beautiful patterns on the historic walls and priceless artwork. But Thomas's attention was focused entirely on his duties, his senses sharp and his mind alert. He had no idea that within the next few minutes, he would overhear a conversation that would shock him to his core and force him to make a decision that would change everything for the royal family he had sworn to protect. The sound of raised voices coming from the blue drawing room immediately caught Thomas's attention. In his 12 years of service, he had rarely heard anyone speak loudly within the palace walls. The royal family and their guests typically maintained calm, measured tones even during heated discussions. This was different, and it sent alarm bells ringing in Thomas's mind. He moved closer to the corridor that led to the blue drawing room, his training taking over as he assessed whether this might be a security concern. The voices were becoming clearer now, and Thomas recognized Queen Camilla's distinctive tone. She sounded angry, more upset than he had ever heard her before. The other voice belonged to Princess Catherine, but she seemed to be speaking in soothing, diplomatic tones. Trying to calm the situation, Thomas positioned himself strategically behind a marble column that provided cover while allowing him to monitor the situation. His duty was to protect the royal family, and if there was any kind of confrontation happening, he needed to be prepared to intervene if necessary. The palace protocol was clear about maintaining the safety and dignity of all family members at all times. The conversation seemed to center around Princess Charlotte, whose name was mentioned several times. Thomas felt his concern growing as he realized that whatever was being discussed involved the 8-year-old princess. Children were always his priority when it came to protection duties, and any threat or concern involving the young royals required immediate attention and careful handling. Queen Camilla's voice rose again, and this time Thomas could make out specific words. She was talking about Charlotte being difficult and disrespectful during recent family gatherings. The accusations seemed to focus on the child's behavior during formal events and her interactions with other family members. Thomas found this surprising, as he had always observed Princess Charlotte to be a well-mannered and delightful child. Princess Catherine's responses were diplomatic but firm. She defended her daughter's character while acknowledging that children sometimes struggle with the formal requirements of royal life. Her voice carried the strength of a protective mother who would not allow anyone to unfairly criticize her child. Thomas had always admired Catherine's grace under pressure, and this situation was bringing out her fierce, maternal instincts. The conversation took a more serious turn when Camilla began discussing solutions to what she perceived as Charlotte's behavioral problems. She suggested that the young princess needed more structured discipline and should perhaps be separated from the family during important events until she learned to behave more appropriately. The coldness in her voice when speaking about an 8-year-old child shocked Thomas to his core. Thomas had worked with enough royal families to understand the complex dynamics that existed within the monarchy. There were often disagreements about protocol, public appearances, and the upbringing of the children. However, what he was hearing went beyond normal family discussions about discipline or education. This sounded like a deliberate attempt to isolate and punish a child for behavior that seemed perfectly normal for her age. The security officer found himself in an increasingly difficult position. His training emphasized the importance of discretion and maintaining the privacy of royal family conversations. Under normal circumstances, he would never interfere in personal family matters or even acknowledge that he had overheard private discussions. However, this conversation involved the welfare of a child, which created a moral dilemma that his training hadn't fully prepared him for. Princess Catherine's voice became more strained as she tried to defend her daughter while maintaining family harmony. She explained that Charlotte was still learning how to navigate the complex world of royal duties and that patience and understanding were more effective than punishment. Her words carried the weight of a mother's love and the wisdom of someone who understood child development, but Camilla seemed unmoved by these arguments. She continued to insist that Charlotte's behavior was unacceptable and that drastic measures were needed to correct it. She spoke about the importance of maintaining royal dignity and ensuring that all family members, regardless of age, upheld the proper standards of conduct. Her tone suggested that she viewed this as a serious threat to the monarchy's reputation. Thomas felt his protective instincts growing stronger as the conversation continued. In his years of service, he had developed genuine affection for all the royal children, but Princess Charlotte held a special place in his heart. She was intelligent, curious, and kind-hearted, exactly the qualities that should be celebrated in a future member of the royal family. The idea that anyone would want to remove her from family gatherings seemed not just wrong, but potentially harmful to her development. The conversation reached a critical point when Camilla made her intentions clear. She wanted Princess Charlotte to be excluded from upcoming family events, including important ceremonial occasions and holiday celebrations. She suggested that the child should be sent away to a boarding school or kept in private quarters until she learned to behave according to royal standards. The proposal was presented as a temporary measure, but Thomas understood the devastating impact such isolation would have on a young child. Princess Catherine's response was immediate and firm. She refused to consider separating her daughter from the family or treating her as if she were some kind of problem to be solved. Her voice carried a strength that Thomas had rarely heard before, the voice of a mother defending her child against an unfair attack. She made it clear that she would not allow anyone to harm her daughter's emotional well-being in the name of royal protocol. The tension in the room was palpable, and Thomas realized that this conversation was reaching a breaking point. He could hear the strain in both women's voices as they struggled to find common ground on an issue that clearly had no easy resolution. The fate of Princess Charlotte seemed to hang in the balance, and Thomas felt compelled to act, though he wasn't sure what action would be appropriate given his position. As the argument continued, Thomas made a decision that would change everything. He realized that he could not stand by and allow harm to come to any member of the royal family, especially a child who couldn't defend herself. His oath of service included protecting the royal family from all threats, and sometimes those threats came from within. It was time for him to step forward and make his voice heard. Regardless of the consequences for his career, Thomas took a deep breath and stepped forward, his mind racing as he prepared to do something unprecedented in his 12 years of service. Never before had he interrupted a private conversation between senior members of the royal family, but the circumstances demanded immediate action. The welfare of Princess Charlotte was at stake, and his protective instincts overrode all protocol and procedure. He approached the partially open door of the blue drawing room with careful, measured steps. His heart was pounding, but his training kept his movements calm and controlled. Thomas knew that what he was about to do could end his career, but he also knew that he would never forgive himself if he remained silent. While a child was being treated unfairly, the conversation inside had reached a new level of intensity. Queen Camilla was now demanding specific details about when and how Princess Charlotte would be removed from upcoming family events. She spoke about the Christmas celebrations at Sandringham, suggesting that Charlotte should remain in London while the rest of the family gathered for the holidays. The coldness in her voice when discussing the separation of a child from her family during the most important time of year was heartbreaking. Princess Catherine's responses had become increasingly desperate. She was fighting for her daughter with every diplomatic tool at her disposal, but Camilla seemed determined to pursue her course of action. Catherine spoke about the psychological damage that such isolation could cause to a young child, about the importance of family unity, and about Charlotte's genuine love for royal traditions and ceremonies. Thomas cleared his throat softly as he appeared in the doorway, his uniform immaculate and his bearing respectful but firm. Both women turned to look at him with surprise and concern. It was highly unusual for any staff member to interrupt a private family meeting, and the expressions on their faces reflected their shock at this breach of protocol. "Your Majesty." "Your Royal Highness," Thomas began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "I apologize for the interruption, but I felt compelled to speak regarding the conversation I have overheard about Princess Charlotte." He maintained perfect military posture while speaking, showing respect for their positions while making it clear that he had something important to say. Queen Camilla's face darkened with anger at the guard's presumption. "Officer Mitchell, this is entirely inappropriate. You have no business involving yourself in private family matters. I suggest you return to your duties immediately before this becomes a disciplinary issue." Her voice carried the full weight of royal authority, intended to intimidate Thomas into retreat. But Thomas had made his decision, and he would not be deterred. "With the greatest respect, Your Majesty, my duties include the protection of all members of the royal family, particularly the children. What I've heard discussed today concerns me greatly from both a security and welfare perspective." His years of military training had taught him how to remain calm under pressure, and he drew on that experience now. Princess Catherine looked at Thomas with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. She could see that the guard was taking an enormous personal and professional risk by speaking up, and she appreciated his concern for her daughter. However, she also understood the delicate nature of the situation and the potential consequences for everyone involved. Thomas continued, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "In my 12 years of service to this family, I have had the privilege of observing Princess Charlotte grow from a toddler into the remarkable young girl she is today. She is intelligent, compassionate, and respectful. Her behavior during family events has always been appropriate for her age, and she shows genuine enthusiasm for her royal duties." Queen Camilla attempted to interrupt, but Thomas respectfully but firmly continued. "I have witnessed Princess Charlotte's interactions with staff, visiting dignitaries, and the public. She consistently demonstrates kindness, curiosity, and good manners. Any suggestion that she requires removal from family gatherings or punishment for inappropriate behavior is, in my professional opinion, unfounded and potentially harmful." The silence that followed was deafening. Both women stared at the guard who had just challenged a senior member of the royal family in defense of a child. Thomas could feel his career hanging in the balance, but he also felt a deep sense of satisfaction at having spoken the truth. Princess Charlotte deserved to have someone advocate for her, even if that someone was just a palace guard. Princess Catherine was the first to break the silence. "Officer Mitchell, while your intervention is highly irregular, I appreciate your concern for my daughter's welfare. Your observations about Charlotte's character and behavior align with my own, and I value your professional perspective." Her words were carefully chosen to support Thomas while avoiding further confrontation with Camilla. But Queen Camilla was not finished. Her face was flushed with anger, and her voice shook as she responded. "This is absolutely unacceptable. A security officer has no right to involve himself in family decisions or to question the judgment of senior royals. Officer Mitchell, you are dismissed from your duties immediately, and I will be reporting this insubordination to your supervisors." Thomas stood his ground, meeting Camilla's angry gaze with calm determination. "Your Majesty, I understand the consequences of my actions, and I accept full responsibility for them. However, I took an oath to protect this family, and that includes protecting them from decisions that could cause harm, regardless of where those decisions originate." His words were respectful but unwavering. The tension in the room was explosive. Thomas had essentially accused Queen Camilla of planning to harm Princess Charlotte, while Camilla had threatened to end his career. Princess Catherine found herself caught between supporting her daughter's defender and maintaining family relationships. The situation had escalated far beyond a simple disagreement about child discipline. Thomas reached into his uniform pocket and withdrew a small recording device. Both women stared at it in shock as he placed it carefully on a nearby table. "I have recorded this entire conversation," he announced quietly. "Not for any malicious purpose, but because the welfare of Princess Charlotte is more important than protocol, careers, or family politics." The implications of what Thomas had just revealed sent shockwaves through the room. Royal conversations were never recorded without explicit consent, and the existence of such a recording created a scandal that could reach far beyond the palace walls. Queen Camilla's face went pale as she realized that her words about removing Charlotte from family events were now documented evidence. Thomas looked directly at both women as he delivered his final statement. "This recording will remain secure as long as Princess Charlotte is treated with the love, respect, and inclusion that every child in this family deserves. Any attempt to isolate, punish, or remove her from family gatherings will result in this conversation becoming public knowledge." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I believe that would be far more damaging to the royal family's reputation than anything an 8-year-old child could ever do." The silence in the blue drawing room was suffocating as the full impact of Thomas's revelation settled over both women. The existence of a recording device had transformed a private family dispute into a potential public relations catastrophe. Queen Camilla stared at the small device on the table as if it were a bomb that could explode at any moment, destroying everything she had worked to build within the royal family. Princess Catherine's mind was racing as she processed the implications of what had just occurred. On one hand, she was grateful that someone had stood up for her daughter when she herself was struggling to protect Charlotte from unfair treatment. On the other hand, she understood that this situation could spiral completely out of control, potentially damaging the monarchy itself if not handled carefully. Queen Camilla was the first to recover her composure, though her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "Officer Mitchell, do you realize what you have done? This is not just insubordination or a breach of protocol. This is blackmail against the crown itself. You are threatening to expose private royal family conversations unless we comply with your demands regarding a child's discipline." Thomas remained calm, his military training serving him well in this tense moment. "Your Majesty, I prefer to think of it as ensuring that the best interests of Princess Charlotte are protected. I have no desire to harm the royal family or to create any public scandal. My only concern is preventing what I believe would be serious, emotional harm to a young child who has done nothing to deserve such treatment." The guard's words carried weight because everyone in the room knew that he was right about the potential consequences. Princess Charlotte was beloved by the British public, who had watched her grow up through countless official photographs and public appearances. The idea of her being excluded from family celebrations or treated as a problem child would generate enormous sympathy for her and intense criticism of anyone perceived as responsible for her mistreatment. Princess Catherine stepped forward, her voice carefully measured as she addressed both Thomas and Camilla. "I think we all need to step back and consider what is truly best for Charlotte and for the family as a whole. This situation has escalated far beyond what anyone intended, and we need to find a way forward that protects everyone involved." Her diplomatic training was evident as she tried to defuse the explosive tension in the room, but Queen Camilla was not ready to back down. Her position within the royal family had been hard-won, and she was not about to allow a palace guard to dictate family policy, regardless of his motivations. "Princess Catherine, surely you can see that we cannot allow staff members to record private conversations and use them as leverage against family decisions. This sets a dangerous precedent that could undermine the very foundation of royal privacy and authority." Thomas understood Camilla's concerns, but he also recognized that she was trying to shift the focus away from her treatment of Princess Charlotte and onto his breach of protocol. Your Majesty, I acknowledge that my methods are unconventional and that I have violated standard procedures. However, the content of this conversation is what truly matters. The question is not whether I should have recorded it, but whether the plans discussed in it are appropriate or fair to Princess Charlotte. The conversation had reached a critical crossroads. Each person in the room faced difficult choices that would have lasting consequences. Thomas had to decide whether to continue his confrontation with Queen Camilla, knowing that it could destroy not only his career but potentially create a crisis for the entire royal family. Camilla had to choose between maintaining her position on Charlotte's discipline and accepting that her plans had been exposed and challenged. Catherine had to balance her role as a protective mother with her responsibilities as a senior member of the royal family. As the tension mounted, the sound of children's laughter echoed from somewhere in the palace corridors. Princess Charlotte's distinctive giggle could be heard among the voices, a reminder of the innocent child at the center of this adult conflict. The sound seemed to break through the political maneuvering and remind everyone of what was truly at stake. Thomas seized on this moment to make his position even clearer. That is the sound of a happy, healthy child who loves her family and her role within it. Princess Charlotte takes pride in representing the royal family at public events, and she works hard to meet the expectations placed upon her. To suggest that she should be excluded from family gatherings is to punish her for being exactly what we should want in a young royal: spirited, intelligent, and genuine. Princess Catherine's eyes filled with tears as she listened to her daughter's laughter and thought about the conversation that had been taking place. Charlotte adores the family Christmas celebrations, she said softly. She spends weeks preparing homemade gifts for everyone and practices her curtsy so she can greet guests properly. The thought of telling her that she cannot participate because of some perceived behavioral problem would break her heart. The emotional weight of Catherine's words seemed to affect even Queen Camilla, who had perhaps not fully considered the impact her proposals would have on Charlotte herself. The child in question was not some abstract problem to be solved, but a real little girl with feelings, hopes, and dreams. The idea of crushing her spirit in the name of royal protocol began to seem not just harsh, but genuinely cruel. Thomas sensed that the mood in the room was shifting, and he pressed his advantage carefully. In my years of protecting this family, I have learned that the greatest threat to the monarchy is not external criticism or political opposition, but internal divisions that weaken the bonds between family members. Princess Charlotte represents the future of this institution, and how she is treated today will shape not only her character but also how she approaches her royal duties when she is older. Queen Camilla sat down heavily in one of the elegant chairs, the fight seeming to go out of her as she considered the implications of her actions. She had genuinely believed that firmer discipline was necessary to ensure Charlotte developed proper royal bearing, but she was beginning to see that her approach might be counterproductive. The last thing she wanted was to be remembered as the person who damaged a young princess's relationship with her royal heritage. The room fell silent again, but this time it was a thoughtful silence rather than an angry one. Each person was processing the conversation and considering possible paths forward. Thomas waited patiently, knowing that his bold gambit had created an opportunity for reflection and potential reconciliation, but also understanding that the ultimate decisions lay with the royal family members themselves. Princess Catherine finally spoke, her voice stronger and more confident than it had been throughout the entire confrontation. I propose that we end this discussion now and agree that Charlotte will continue to participate fully in all family events and celebrations. She will receive age-appropriate guidance about royal protocol, but she will not be punished or excluded for behavior that is normal for an 8-year-old child. Her statement was firm and non-negotiable, showing that she had found her voice as both a mother and a senior royal. Queen Camilla looked up at Princess Catherine with a mixture of surprise and resignation. The younger woman's firm stance had caught her off guard, and she was beginning to realize that her position on this issue was untenable. The combination of Thomas's recording and Catherine's unwavering defense of her daughter had created a situation where backing down was her only realistic option. "Very well," Camilla said slowly, her voice lacking its earlier authority. "Perhaps I have been too harsh in my assessment of Charlotte's behavior. The pressures of royal life can sometimes make us forget that children need time to grow and learn." Her words were carefully chosen, offering a face-saving retreat while acknowledging that her previous position had been wrong. Thomas felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he remained alert and professional. The immediate crisis might be passing, but the long-term implications of his actions were still unclear. He had successfully protected Princess Charlotte from what he believed would have been harmful treatment, but he had also crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. His relationship with the royal family would never be the same. Princess Catherine nodded graciously at Camilla's concession, showing the diplomatic grace that had made her such an effective representative of the monarchy. "Thank you for understanding. Charlotte is a wonderful child who simply needs patience and guidance as she learns to balance being a normal little girl with her royal responsibilities. With time and support, I believe she will become an asset to the royal family." The conversation turned to practical matters as both women worked to establish a new understanding about Charlotte's role in family events. They discussed age-appropriate expectations, the importance of allowing her personality to shine through while still maintaining royal dignity, and ways to help her develop confidence in public settings. The tone was now collaborative rather than confrontational. Thomas listened to this exchange with growing satisfaction. His risky intervention had not only protected Princess Charlotte from immediate harm, but had also opened up a dialogue that might benefit her in the long term. The royal family was now discussing how to nurture and support the young princess rather than how to punish and isolate her. However, the question of what to do about Thomas himself still loomed large. He had recorded a private royal conversation without permission, interrupted a family meeting, and essentially blackmailed a senior member of the royal family. These actions, while motivated by good intentions, represented serious breaches of protocol that could not simply be ignored. Queen Camilla seemed to be thinking along the same lines as she turned her attention back to Thomas. "Officer Mitchell, while I appreciate your concern for Princess Charlotte, we cannot overlook the methods you used to intervene in this situation. The recording of private royal conversations is a serious matter that raises questions about trust and security within the palace." Thomas straightened his shoulders and met her gaze directly. "Your Majesty, I understand completely, and I take full responsibility for my actions. I knew the risks when I made the decision to speak up, and I am prepared to accept whatever consequences you deem appropriate. My only request is that the recording be destroyed now that Princess Charlotte's welfare has been secured." Princess Catherine intervened before Camilla could respond. "Actually, I think Officer Mitchell's actions, while unconventional, demonstrate exactly the kind of loyalty and dedication we want in our security personnel. He put the welfare of a family member above his own career prospects, which shows remarkable integrity." Her words were clearly intended to protect Thomas from potential retaliation. The three adults stood in contemplative silence for several moments, each considering the complex dynamics that had been revealed during this extraordinary conversation. Trust had been both broken and strengthened in unexpected ways. Thomas had violated protocol but had proven his absolute commitment to protecting the family. Camilla had overreached in her disciplinary proposals but had shown the grace to retreat when confronted with opposition. Catherine had demonstrated that she could be both diplomatic and fiercely protective when her children's welfare was at stake. The sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor reminded everyone that life in the palace continued around them. Soon, other family members, staff, and visitors would require their attention, and this private drama would need to be set aside for the normal business of royal life. The question was whether they could move forward together or whether this incident would create lasting divisions. Thomas made the first move toward resolution by carefully picking up the recording device from the table. "With your permission, I will destroy this recording immediately in your presence." Its only purpose was to ensure Princess Charlotte's protection, and that goal has been achieved. He held the device up so both women could see it clearly. Queen Camilla nodded slowly. I think that would be appropriate, Officer Mitchell. And perhaps we should all agree that this conversation never took place. At least as far as any official records are concerned. Her suggestion was both practical and generous, offering Thomas protection from potential disciplinary action while maintaining the privacy that royal families required. Princess Catherine agreed immediately. This entire incident arose from our mutual concern for Charlotte's well-being, even though we initially disagreed about the best approach. I think we have reached an understanding that serves her interests and maintains family harmony. Her diplomatic summary provided a framework for everyone to move forward. Without losing face, Thomas activated the device's delete function and showed both women as the recording was permanently erased. The small act seemed to lift a weight from the room, symbolizing the end of the crisis and the beginning of a new understanding between the three adults who had been brought together by their shared concern for Princess Charlotte. As the tension finally began to dissipate, Queen Camilla surprised everyone by extending her hand to Thomas. Officer Mitchell, I may not agree with your methods, but I cannot fault your motives. Your dedication to protecting this family is commendable, even when that protection extends to protecting us from ourselves. Her gesture was gracious and unexpected, showing that she could rise above personal offense when circumstances warranted it. Thomas shook her hand respectfully, feeling both relief and gratitude for her unexpected generosity. Thank you for your understanding, Your Majesty. Protecting this family will always be my highest priority, and I pledge to continue serving with the discretion and professionalism that my position requires. His words carried a promise that future interventions, should they ever be necessary, would be handled with greater tact and diplomacy. 3 months later, the Christmas celebrations at Sandringham were in full swing, and Princess Charlotte was at the center of all the festivities. She had spent weeks preparing handmade gifts for every family member, from carefully painted ornaments for her grandparents to a knitted scarf she had made for her father with help from her nanny. Her excitement was infectious as she helped decorate the enormous Christmas tree and practiced her curtsy for the traditional Christmas Day church service. Thomas Mitchell stood at his assigned post, watching the family gather in the grand drawing room for their annual Christmas Eve celebration. Princess Charlotte wore a beautiful red velvet dress and moved gracefully among the adults, engaging in conversations with visiting dignitaries and family friends with the poise of someone much older. Her natural charm and genuine interest in others made her a favorite among guests, who were consistently impressed by her intelligence and kindness. The transformation in the family dynamics had been remarkable. Queen Camilla had become one of Charlotte's strongest supporters, often praising the young princess's progress in mastering royal protocol while allowing her personality to shine through. The relationship between them had evolved into one of mutual respect, with Camilla serving as a mentor who encouraged Charlotte's growth without stifling her spirit. During the carol service that evening, Thomas observed as Charlotte participated with enthusiasm and reverence. She sang beautifully, her clear voice adding to the magical atmosphere of the candle-lit service. When it came time for the traditional readings, she delivered her assigned passage with confidence and clarity, earning approving smiles from all the adults present. It was clear that the gentle guidance and support she had received over the past months had helped her flourish. Princess Catherine had also grown stronger and more confident in her role as a protective mother. The incident in the blue drawing room had taught her that sometimes diplomacy needed to be balanced with firm advocacy for her children's welfare. She had successfully navigated the delicate balance between maintaining family harmony and ensuring that her daughter was treated fairly and with appropriate respect for her age and development. The Christmas Day church service was a public triumph for the entire royal family. Princess Charlotte walked confidently beside her parents, greeting well-wishers with warm smiles and perfect curtsies. The British public, who had followed her growth through official photographs and brief public appearances, were delighted to see her obvious happiness and confidence. Social media was filled with positive comments about her poise, her beautiful smile, and her genuine interactions with the crowds. Thomas had received a private commendation from Prince William following the Christmas celebrations. The future king had somehow learned about the incident that had occurred months earlier, though he never revealed his sources. He thanked Thomas for his dedication to protecting his family and specifically mentioned his appreciation for the guard's concern for Charlotte's welfare. The recognition meant more to Thomas than any official medal or ceremony could have. The recording incident had never been mentioned again after that day in the blue drawing room, and Thomas had returned to his duties without any official disciplinary action. However, his colleagues had noticed a change in how senior family members interacted with him. There was a deeper level of trust and respect that hadn't existed before, as if they recognized that his loyalty went beyond mere professional obligation to genuine care for their well-being. Queen Camilla had also undergone a significant transformation in her approach to family relationships. The incident had forced her to examine her own motivations and methods, leading to a more nurturing and supportive role with all the royal children. She began spending individual time with Charlotte, teaching her about royal history and traditions while encouraging her questions and curiosity about her heritage. As the Christmas season progressed, Thomas often observed small moments that confirmed the positive changes that had occurred. He saw Charlotte teaching Prince Louis a new game while Princess Catherine and Queen Camilla watched approvingly from nearby chairs. He witnessed the warm hugs exchanged between Charlotte and Camilla during family gatherings, genuine displays of affection that would have been impossible just months earlier. The palace staff had also noticed the improved atmosphere within the family quarters. There was less tension during family meetings, more laughter echoing through the corridors, and a general sense that the royal children were thriving in an environment that celebrated their individual personalities while still maintaining appropriate standards of behavior. Thomas's own perspective on his role had evolved as well. The incident had taught him that sometimes protecting the royal family meant making difficult decisions that went beyond traditional security concerns. He had learned to trust his instincts about situations that might not involve physical danger but could still cause significant harm to family members, particularly the children who couldn't always advocate for themselves. The new year brought new opportunities for Princess Charlotte to shine in her royal role. She participated in several charitable events with her parents, showing genuine interest in the causes they supported and asking thoughtful questions about how she might contribute. Her natural empathy and desire to help others made her an ideal representative for the monarchy's charitable mission. During a particularly meaningful visit to a children's hospital, Thomas watched as Charlotte interacted with young patients with remarkable sensitivity and warmth. She listened carefully to their stories, shared appropriate details about her own life, and left each child feeling special and important. The hospital staff were amazed by her maturity and kindness, noting that she had a natural gift for connecting with people of all ages. As spring arrived, and the family prepared for various official engagements, Thomas reflected on the dramatic events that had changed everything for Princess Charlotte and the entire royal family. A single moment of moral courage had prevented what could have been serious emotional harm to a young child, and had ultimately strengthened the family bonds that were so crucial to the monarchy's success. Princess Charlotte continued to grow and flourish, developing into exactly the kind of royal that Britain needed for the future. She was confident but not arrogant, traditional but not rigid, and genuinely caring about the people she would one day serve. The crisis that had threatened to damage her relationship with her royal heritage had instead helped to strengthen it, ensuring that she would approach her future duties with both competence and compassion. Thomas Mitchell remained at his post, vigilant and protective, knowing that he had played a crucial role in securing not just the safety but the happiness of the royal family he had sworn to serve. His actions had proven that sometimes the greatest act of loyalty is the willingness to speak truth to power, even when the consequences could be severe. In protecting Princess Charlotte, he had helped to protect the future of the monarchy itself.